So last week I decided to split the power rankings into groups, so I'll do the same again this week. So I'll be grouping the bottom four, the middle four, and the top four. So let's get started with the teams in the bottom four. In 12th, I have Huddersfield Giants moving down one. In 11th, I have the Castleford Tigers moving up one. In 10th, I have the Salford Red Devils. And 9th, I have Catalans Dragons, both in the same spot as last week. Huddersfield Giants had to move down for me simply because of how poor they were. Now, there's nothing wrong with assuming that they'd lose to Hull Kingston Rovers at the weekend, but at this level, you just can't be getting battered like that. And the fact they actually had a somewhat decent team out on paper makes the result so disappointing. The most exciting thing for the Giants going forward is the progression of Flanagan in the halves. Now, the Castleford Tigers move up simply because they actually put in a somewhat respectable performance against Hull FC. It felt like for most of the game, Hull FC were the stronger team and Cas were just about staying in it, but that's something that I've talked about with Cas before. They are lacking in quality, but sometimes you'll get these gritty efforts from them just to make life a little more difficult for some teams, especially at home. Salford Red Devils are basically getting a pass this week because of the team that they were able to put out. Roughly half of the squad was kids, half of it was regulars, and as much as it's never nice to be on the receiving end of a battering, I didn't see enough from the Tigers to justify a two-place jump, and let's be honest, Salford actually have a good excuse at the moment for the battering, whereas Huddersfield don't. I can fully understand if there are disagreements with the order of the bottom three in particular, but that's my justification right now. And finally, in the bottom four, I have Catalans Dragons, who were very close to a vital win against Saints in round 6. Their attack looks unbelievably slow and sluggish. It's not fun to watch at all. But defensively, they are continuing to show signs that they can handle themselves now. Now, there's no justification for them to move up or down right now, but I think most people would agree that in terms of quality, they're probably far enough removed from that bottom three, but not quite close enough to be in the conversation or mix with the middle four just yet. So moving on to the middle four, I have Leigh Leopards moving down 2 into 8th place, Warrington Wolves moving up 1 to 7th, Leeds Rhinos stepping down a place into 6th, and Wakefield Trinity moving up 2 into 5th place. Leigh Leopards have taken such a dive over the last few weeks, which is really disappointing to see. There was this feeling around them after the first 2 to 3 weeks that we could be looking at something very special from Leigh. Now, I don't really have the answers as to why they've taken such a dive. Maybe Leigh fans can give me their thoughts. My usual concerns for them on a weekly basis is just the forward pack. And there was some lazy defending at times versus Wakey at the weekend. They're on such a bad run at the moment. I'm not sure when they'll be able to get out of it. I do trust the individuals in that team to kind of change things at some point. And I don't think this bad run will last forever. But as of right now, Leigh do need to move down 2 places. Next up, I'll sort of combine Warrington and Leeds together because some might think Wire should be above Leeds after beating them, but I think this works out quite nicely, in my opinion. So Warrington get to move up because they won, Leeds move down because they lost, but the circumstances of the game at the weekend, I think balance out. I think most people would agree. Leeds had to play a man down for the last 6 minutes or so of the game, at which point Warrington, they were trailing and then were able to take the lead in that time. And the Rhinos' first try was, well, it was a mile forward. And given that Leeds were winning until the yellow card, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and keep them ahead. But I think the performance from both teams was fairly well balanced. Leeds were harder to bring down as Warrington missed about double the tackles that Leeds did. But Warrington put in another solid physical display, and that's the perks of having Musgrove, Vaughan and Harrison starting games. So as of right now, Leeds just above Warrington, but one moves up, one moves down. But Wakefield Trinity, though, up 2 places into 5th. What an impressive effort against Leigh, and overall, what an impressive team they look to be. Now, they've been up for the physicality since day one. They've shown intent to spread the ball and make teams work defensively since day one, and they're competing through the middle and scrambling well defensively themselves since day one. They're basically doing what Leigh did when they came back up into Super League a few years ago. And there was a part of me for a few weeks that didn't really trust what I was seeing. I was waiting for it to drop off. Not that they'd fall apart, but that the initial spark might wear off. They'd come in with all this energy, this grit, this fight, this desire, and then it would just be a difference in quality they might not be able to keep up with, but they are doing a fantastic job this season. And this is a season where most teams look extremely strong on paper. So, fair play to Wakefield, but they move up 2 into 5th. Finally, we move on to the top 4, all of which are non-movers this week. So we have Hull FC in 4th, St Helens in 3rd, Wigan Warriors in 2nd, and the Hull Kingston Rovers in 1st. Hull FC looked fairly comfortable against Cas on Thursday, and they probably should have won by a greater margin. They certainly had the possession and territory to do more damage, but in most areas they were comfortable enough. They're competing with and beating the teams that you'd expect a top 4 team to beat or compete with, and they showed versus Wigan in the Challenge Cup that it's within them to take on the best in the league when they can find that next level in them. They're not perfect, but they are a team that does need to be taken seriously at this point. But next up is St Helens, who just about got away with a win in the south of France at the weekend. They're a tough team to place right now because I still trust them to dominate or at least compete against anyone in the forwards. They're absolutely stacked with quality all across the squad, but on field, in possession, we just don't know what we're going to get sometimes. Defensively, I can't really fault them. That's their best asset right now, and I think that's going to keep them winning most games throughout the year, keeping them near the top. But in possession, maybe there needs to be a change. I've seen a lot of Saints fans complaining about Lomax being the problem. So if any Saints fans are watching, let me know your thoughts on what should happen in the halves or the backs in general. But I will say the margin of error to Hull FC is actually very close right now. Both teams have some interesting games coming up, and it won't take much to swap these teams around. But moving on to Wigan Warriors, there isn't really a lot to say other than what do you expect them to do? They came up against a Salford side that was never really going to be able to compete, and Wigan won accordingly. In a normal game situation, I think their attack and defence is still clearly right up there. Maybe this year they're a little more vulnerable defensively, and offensively they have looked a slightly one-dimensional team at times. That's usually when they're missing a key name or a few key names, but they're clearly a top 2 team for me right now, just a touch off first place. So that brings me on to Hull Kingston Rovers. Now, it did take them a few weeks to get back to the form we expected them to start with in 2025, but they got there eventually. Mikey Lewis is playing at his absolute best right now, and as a unit, they just look really competent on both sides of the game. And maybe the inclusion of Artur Morg will be the difference they need to go that extra step this year. And I won't say whether he's better than now levels for Hull Kingston Rovers. I'll leave that up to KR fans to let me know their thoughts on what Artur Morg can bring for them specifically. But I just think something different could be what Hull KR need in the biggest games throughout the year. Now, they're not a perfect team. They can still be vulnerable, but that's only if they come up against someone that brings enough quality and sustains it for a full 80 minutes. But as of right now, Hull Kingston Rovers are clearly the strongest in Super League and stay in first place. So that's going to be my Super League Round 6 power rankings. If you guys have your own list, let me know in the comments down below, and also make sure you answer the Rugby League fan question that I pinned to the comments as well. But if you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like. It does help to get the video out there to more people. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with more Rugby League content, and check out the Kinetic Rugby League website and store in the description down below. But that's going to be it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.